Merschen, founder of SIGMUND Project. Welcome to London.
Thank you.
Thank you for taking the time to speak to us today at Hablo Talks. I'll start off, I guess, by just stating the obvious and the fact that you are based in the US and we are in London. So you are one of the first to be able to travel and visit from the US. So how was that travel experience?
It was relatively painless, except for navigating the websites on the demands of what I needed to be here. Everything else was relatively easy and almost back to the old times, except wearing a mask, which is not a big ask.
Not a big ask, no. And the flight was busy?
Flight was pretty well packed, and it was easy to get on once I showed all the documentation I had to. And when I arrived in London, I was through immigration in less than 5 minutes.
Amazing.
So quite easy. And I was lucky enough to come in right when the law changed and anyone who was vaccinated didn't have to quarantine.
Yeah.
So I felt like I got a get out of jail free card early.
Absolutely. As it stands today, we can't travel to the US, but
sorry.
I know. As soon as we're allowed in, then we'll do a follow-up interview in your hometown. So I guess we'll start by just talking a bit about yourself. I know that you've been in the industry for a long time. We're not talking ages at all, but maybe start by just telling us a bit about your industry experience, where you started and how you got to where you are today.
Sure. Well, I'm a recovering academician. So I was actually a teacher. I taught at a couple of universities, taught business, thoroughly enjoyed it, but academia was never known for high pay. And I was teaching business. So I started doing consulting on the side, high-tech, healthcare, a little of everything, and got introduced to one tourist board. I didn't know what a tourist board was. It was the Northern Territory of Australia. Being a geographically challenged American, I had to go to the map and look. But then once I got my first introduction into it, the people who were in the industry, I found out what a fam trip was. I think I was hooked into it. I also saw the intricate nature of the industry and the possibilities and the opportunities too. So I was hooked. I moved, kind of weaned off my teaching onto a business, Myriad Marketing, and started that path and growing that business. So that's how I got into it. And now I've taken the twist. I was lucky enough to sell the company and finished my earnout and everything right before COVID hit. So thank you. And started the SIGMUND Project. So it's been a great journey.
Yeah. And was Myriad Marketing, was that kind of one of the first sales and marketing representation companies maybe in the US?
I think we certainly grew to be the biggest out of all of those. I think there were small individuals doing it on a one-on-one basis. I think we were the ones who made it into a formula and took it on a global nature and had clients on all 5 continents. So I think that's where we had a growth. I think the other thing was traditionally it was more sales and a little bit of marketing, where we brought in marketing, public relations, advertising, and took the full 360 approach to working with the tourist offices from around the world.
Yeah. From your perspective, why do you feel travel is the best industry to work in?
It's easy to say the people, but I think when you really look at other industries, it is the people and the nature of the people. The fact that it's a hospitality business, it's helping people experience something, it's helping people learn, it keeps evolving. It allows us to challenge ourselves for new destinations, new cultures, new societies, and allows us to continue to learn and to meet people who are very like-minded, who want to achieve something too.
Yeah. I think that's what I've found the hardest over this period is the inability to meet face-to-face and interact and learn off other people, because it is very difficult to do that off a laptop screen.
By all means.
I think we've all found. What does make the travel trade such a strong community in terms of those people and those networks that you create?
I mean, it's a great question. I think one of the things I've always seen is all the elements of travel and tourism are interrelated and interdependent. Where in some industries, it's very linear. Somebody buys something, somebody manufactures it, somebody sells it, and those people don't know each other at all. It's only one link away. We have this web of people working together, all interdependent. The airlines are dependent on the hotels, on the tourist boards, on the tour operators. And for that traveler's experience, they're going to hit all those touch points and they're dependent on each other. So we're all dependent on each other to make sure that the industry works. And there's few other industries besides maybe the medical industry or construction that you are so dependent on everyone else. The other part is why we're in the industry. We're in this industry to help people have a good time, to help people learn why they travel, and to help expose people to other cultures and societies. It's one of those great jobs where in the back of our minds, I think, almost everything we're doing, we have the ability to do well, but at the same time, we have that great ability to do good. And they're interwoven to each other. And so we do that with the travelers, with our consumers. We do that at a B2B level with our colleagues. The other part is we're hooked into this industry for many of us, and we really don't want to leave. And that helps, I think, keep the performance up, because everybody knows what's happening with you in this industry. And so your reputation and your ability to grow and your ability to partner and collaborate with others is key, because that's the future for you as well as for the industry.
I completely agree. And you touched on a few things there when you were talking about travel being a force for good. You hear people say that travel is a force for good, but I don't think maybe people outside the industry appreciate how much of an effect it does have, a positive effect on many elements of society. But it's amazing to see how it can impact positively communities around the world.
I think we forget how much travel educates people when they go out, and it educates about different religions, it educates about different ways of life, and it could be domestic tourism. Take a place like the US, which is somewhat polarized. Sometimes visiting the places outside of the cities where you live is a real education to a different society, to a different group of people. And hopefully that education opens a little more doors towards peace and everything. I think the other part is it does it unconsciously to the traveler. They're not saying, I'm going out to get educated about the society. They're going and they're looking at the architecture, they're looking at the churches, and they're saying, oh, there's something here for me to learn. It's not like I've gone back to school on a comparative religious study. I'm taking this in, and it's a gentle way for me to understand it, for me to be taught something.
Yeah. From your perspective, what would be your most memorable travel experience where you've gone somewhere and kind of learned something or experienced something that's, you've never forgotten?
That's such a tough question for somebody who's traveled so much. I think it's like asking a writer what's their favorite article or a parent who's their favorite kid. Instinctively, I think it's Rwanda. And I think it's beyond visiting the gorillas. I think it's seeing a country that has transitioned from a very negative situation to a very positive situation. It's the idea of going to see the gorillas. And it's not unlike so much other tourist activities. It is not seeing the gorillas. It is feeling the gorillas. It is being with the gorillas. When you see what Rwanda has done in coming out from a genocide and changing everything they've done, from taking ex-poachers and making them into guides, into educating everybody about what's happening. And then when you go there and you put religion and politics and everything aside, and you're this close to the gorillas, and if you don't look in their eyes and think we're somehow related, something hasn't clicked. And so here's where tourism has done well for the environment, here's where tourism has done well for the people, and here's where tourism has done incredibly well for the traveler. And I think for me, emotively, that probably comes close to mind as possibly the most important travel experience. Now, dancing in Rio Carnival and all sorts of other stuff would probably be a close second. Cape Town, Table Mountain, all that would be a close second. But I think it always comes down to the emotive parts of the travel more than the physicality of where you've traveled or what you've done.
Yeah. And we probably forget that travelers, as much as people talk about the negative impacts of traveling internationally, communities or countries like Rwanda rely on tourism to keep those programs and charities and communities working, don't they? It's
this is one of the best examples, because they limit the amount of people who go and experience the guerrilla experience. And that makes so much of a difference. Now, they charge a bit to do that, but that money is then distributed not just to maintain the guerrillas, but it's distributed throughout the country, to all four corners of the country. So that makes it a big thing, and they've regulated it from day one. They understand it, and they've had that advantage. So hopefully it serves as a shining example for other destinations. I think especially now, where we get to start with a blank sheet of paper. And it's not like, well, how much money were we making 2 years ago? We need to make that much now. So we're going to go back to our old ways, and then we'll think about it. Now, we're not making any money. Yep. What's the baseline? How much can we make? How much should we make? What's the best way to set it up? Yep. And hopefully everybody gets the message this time correctly.
And that talks to the sustainability of mindset of how, people will now, when we're looking to rebuild sustainably, so we don't get into the challenges of over-tourism and the things that maybe pre-pandemic we were suffering from.
And I think also it gives an opportunity. There were so many destinations that wanted dispersal throughout the country, not just the main cities. Yeah. And now there's an interest because of COVID to not necessarily go to the main places, but to go to the secondary and tertiary markets that need to be built, the rural tourism, the outside, the big cities. Hopefully that might be of bigger interest to the consumer and the traveler than it was before. Yep. And that might be a starting point, and the primary attribute might be the secondary point. And hopefully that spreads things out a little bit for everyone.
Yeah, let's hope. And then going back to one of the other points you made earlier about the interconnectivity of our industry and how much we rely on being connected. I guess both of our ventures is all about collaboration and rebuilding those networks that have been affected over the last year. Maybe talk a little bit about where the idea of the SIGMUND Project came from.
Yes, thank you. Well, I think the concept came out of, for myself, for SIGMUND, was based on a few things. One was, I think the travel industry needed more innovation. I think for the longest time, our innovation was based on new destinations. We needed some true innovation in so many different ways of delivering to consumers, of creating new ways of dealing with business, and so on and so forth. So I think that's always been the back of my head. What COVID brought to the forefront was this openness for collaboration. There's always been some, but a lot of times it was very guarded and very reserved. COVID took away all that and allowed us to be much more creative in our collaboration. Well, I've never talked to that person before, but now I think we need to. Or now I've never thought in terms of doing that, but yes, maybe now I can. Digital conferences, that would never work. How do we make it work better? So all those types of openness was there. Ironically, the ability to collaborate was always there. It's just the openness for that and the creativity of let's try something different. So I think it was the confluence of those two things that came to that point. Then we were able to build in essence, a digital non-for-profit that said, how do we get these people together? Interesting, somebody said, as we talk about my career, somebody said, oh, I get what SIGMUND is in a very simple microcosm. Al, you spent most of your life seeing people at conferences, meeting people and saying, wow, you've got a great idea. Let me introduce you to this guy. Now we're just trying to scale that and say, there's the openness for it. You've got an idea, share the idea. So the platform's built on three basic ideas. One is a resource that we will be putting out ideas. We will be sharing upcoming activities. We will be doing all sorts of things for anybody who's got some creative spark in them to find a way to channel that, as well as calendars and educational institutions, et cetera. The main part of what we do is what we consider open source. And that's the idea for people to share the ideas. And our philosophy is nothing mentioned, nothing gained. If you don't talk about the idea, nobody hears about it. And there's a few people who say, well, I want to sign an NDA. I can tell you every time I signed an NDA throughout my career, the idea never came to fruition because people were just too guarded about it. Yeah. And they needed more collaborators and just wanted to do it on their own. Hopefully this openness will allow people to say, I'm going to put out my idea. Let's see what people say. The ideas that we have now are a whole gamut of sometimes the most embryonic idea that somebody came up with overnight, and they go in the morning and they want to post the idea because here's a good idea that somebody can benefit from, to startups that people have been working on for a few years, to established businesses who want to scale. The collaborators are everything from funding to looking for somebody who can code because I've got the idea, or conversely, I know how to code, but I need to marketing help, other potential collaborators on several different levels.
Yeah.
And the third element is we're doing in 2022, we'll start what we're considering an investment grant program. We will have a competition with grants. They'll be given out. The two caveats are no one company can apply. It has to be a collaboration between at least two companies for them to apply for the grant. And the second of all is the SIGMUND Project will actually take an interest in the organization for 5 years. So we want to pick winners. The revenue that's generated goes back into the SIGMUND Project, and that's what makes it sustainable. So that's the path ahead for us.
The one thing I loved about the strategy, the concept, is that it is there to support our industry as a travel and tourism specifically, the same as our business, and it's built and run by industry veterans who know and has faced all the challenges and kind of has been in that period where there has been very little innovation in our industry, and we can all now see where we need to be in terms of innovation, and we can only really get to that point by collaborating.
Yes.
And maybe one thing I've learned, as a business owner, is you can't do it yourself. It's very, very difficult to do it yourself, and it's so much easier when you collaborate with like-minded individuals who can help you as much as you can help them to grow.
It's so true, and I think the first journal entry that I wrote on our looking forward area was an old comment that I heard for anybody who wants to start a business, and it was to be successful in an entrepreneurship, you need the perfect blend of arrogance and ignorance. And I think I had both. I think I was probably ignorant of my arrogance, but it was this boxer mentality that I can go out and do it on my own. I just need a good corner. And then you realize, boy, a team really can do much better. And one of our philosophies is an old African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go on your own. If you want to go far, go with others. Right. And we take that very seriously as kind of our mantra for the SIGMUND Project.
Yeah, amazing. On Hablo's side, we've seen, our platform is obviously all about, connecting tourist boards with the trade, and also learning about, the innovation that is happening within the industry.
And I think the platform you've created is a great way to push the idea of collaboration, and giving that open platform, not just for here's a person, meet another person, but here's all the tools that you can use for that collaboration and that education all in one place. So I salute you guys for doing that, because I think it makes it easier when you're not part of something that you're trying to build your own community, but the whole process is about the community and you're within that community. It's that, I think when I first went to that site, it was that same feeling that you have when you go to a trade show. And you're going to know people there. Your shoulders kind of drop a little because, okay, I'm good. These are my people.
Yeah.
And I think that allows you to then exercise your creative muscle a little better because you're in a place of comfort. And that's without a doubt what we all need, especially now.
Yeah, no, I agree. And platforms and websites that are dedicated to our industry, I think is what we need, because, there are a lot bigger ones out there that we all know, but, something that is just for us and is only ever going to be developed for us as an industry, I think is the way forward. And then looking at the future, what's gone by has gone by, but what gets you excited about the future for the travel industry?
I think it comes back to now the openness for creativity that probably wasn't there before. the openness to work with other industries, the openness to say, this hasn't been done before, but why can't we try it now? Because we've almost back to a blank sheet of paper, there's a lot of, well, what could we do? And, it pains me when somebody says, well, once we get back to the old days. Well, I don't know of anybody who wants to get back to the old days. There was some good stuff, but it's time to move on, and it'll be a different place. One of the things I love is when somebody says, oh, I think we can start to see the light at the end of the tunnel. Fantastic. But we have to keep in mind that when we go into a tunnel, we come out in a different place. And so this is a destination. We should be good at knowing about destinations, and we're going to go to a different destination now. The journey hasn't been easy, but we can now create that new place for ourselves with all the things that we've always said that we needed. Now's the opportunity, and that creativity is there. And so it's certainly been a hard time for a whole lot of people, and your heart really goes out for them. But it's also the time to start again and say, okay, let's remove those negatives. Let's look at the positive. Let's see what we can do, how we can educate people. I think the other good thing, sadly, is the tourism industry as an industry has been presented to the general population, and now they realize there's a big industry behind it. It wasn't just, that's what I do for 2 weeks a year on vacation. Wow, there's a big, important machine. And it's important not only for consumers, but for investors, for other companies, for other people to say how important this industry, if we employ 1 out of 10 people in the world, this is a significant industry. And so the sad part is it needed this to open people's eyes for that. And hopefully a lot more of that creativity comes into it. And hopefully a lot more collaboration comes into it too.
Yeah, amazing. I agree with that. I mean, the analogy of that tunnel, is perfect. It really is. Who's been your biggest mentor through your industry career, and what's the best piece of advice they've given you?
Well, it's probably 2 different answers. One, the mentors keep changing. I've had some great experts in the industry. The best mentor I have right now is a 23-year-old Romanian woman who's helping me navigate through social media better than I have before. Yeah. I think it's an important note to say it's not the old guys in the industry who are the mentors. A lot of times it's the young people who can help us navigate and understand and get educated about things to which we're not familiar. I think the other part is about every time I've mentored, I think I've learned as much as I've given. When it comes to advice outside of what I've learned in social media, I think one of the best pieces of business advice I ever got was when I was told, remember, there's no real problems in business, only expenses. And I think it's a great philosophy and sometimes a great way to look at business, and especially for the long term. So I keep that probably on a personal level too.
Brilliant. How has your bucket list changed? How has that evolved for you and changed from maybe what it was back in 2019?
I think it'll probably speed up because I've lost a couple of years of it. I think, referencing to kind of what I said before, some of the destinations are certainly still on the list, from a Machu Picchu to Moscow to Arnhem Land in Australia to some places that I've just wanted to go. It's certainly pushed up the idea of experiences and not going to a place, but what am I going to experience? What am I going to learn? And at the same time, maybe because of all the work with SIGMUND accelerating the process, how can I give back to the local community and how can I help the local community? So I think the bucket list has stayed the same. I just want to dive into that bucket as soon as I bloody can.
I think you're not alone. And hopefully that's a good thing for our industry.
Yeah,
everyone will be diving into their bucket list.
Great.
So Al, thank you very much. I've really enjoyed that. That was
my pleasure.
Good fun. Good luck with your project, SIGMUND Project, and we look forward to collaborating in the future.
Thank you much, and all the best to Hablo too.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.